Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Folks, this is Philip Lomboy. Welcome to the program. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, up to 24% of adults have a disability. However, 74% of people that live with severe disabilities do not have outwardly recognizable symptoms. Now, such invisible illnesses may include debilitating pain, brain injuries, and mental health disorders. Now, our guest today is Kristy Hurley, owner and founder of WearIt, an apparel brand that supports and advocates for those with invisible illnesses. Both she and her son have rare genetic conditions, and they started WearIt to help others with invisible illnesses to find confidence and value despite their circumstances. Let's jump into my conversation with Kristy Hurley.
So my company is based on me and my kid. We have a chronic condition. And the thing that I have learned and that I'm trying to teach my son is that embracing the chronic condition instead of hiding it or being embarrassed actually makes you a better, more confident person. And you realize that people actually care. Like, there's a difference between complaining and like talking about it, of course, but people actually care. And so if you use it as part of who you are and who you want to be, I think it makes you stronger. And honestly, there's never going to be a different version of you. So embrace every single part of you, even if it's a hard, chronic, or invisible illness.
No, absolutely. I think people that don't necessarily have like diagnosed conditions could probably use that advice as well, right? But
well, actually, and that's the biggest thing is like you get to know yourself a little bit better, right? And then you realize everybody has something. I mean, whether it's anxiety or they're an introvert or extrovert, if they've had childhood trauma, if they have a chronic condition, if they have, a visible disability, everybody has something that they struggle with. And so that's the message is like, embrace it. And it doesn't mean you have to like it or you have to be positive about it all the time. It just means that recognize it makes you who you are.
Can you talk about who you serve specifically and what do you do for them? What is your goal for the things that your company does?
Well, I have big plans, but I'm starting out at hopefully what is a normal pace, but the company is called WearIt, and the first part of it is based on apparel. So, hoodies, sweatshirts, stickers, that kind of thing, because there's something about a tangible reminder that has value, that you're not just wearing it so other people can have some awareness of what you have or that people have invisible illness in general. It's that for yourself to have a tangible reminder, because sometimes just like, am I making this up in my head? Or it's okay that I have this, then that's the tangible apparel part. Then the second part is in the community where, again, like invisible illness, like people don't know, like looking at me or my kid, that there's something there. And so if you, like I'm trying to work with local communities right now to have something where it's more apparent. And so that there's a little more grace and understanding as you go about your daily life, that maybe you'll interact a little bit differently with the staff or the person who's cutting your hair or something like that. The third one is, I'm really excited about this, and it's still in development. So I'm not going to go into super specific detail because it's a really good idea, but it's working with teachers and administrators to help people with chronic and invisible illnesses in schools communicate a little more effectively and learn to advocate for themselves a little bit easier. So that one is we're really close, but I'm really, really excited about that one. So I hope that through all three of these, that people feel like they're heard, they're seen, and that there's not just my business, but there's other businesses here that want to support them and that believe in them and that want to help them.
So when you talk about invisible illnesses and helping people that have those, you're not talking specifically about what you and your son have. It's a bit more than that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So there's like 6,000 chronic illnesses, and they're rare. Like those are considered rare ones, is 6,000, and only 5% of those actually have specific treatment. And then there's like a billion people worldwide that have a chronic medical condition, and 96% of those people have an invisible illness that goes along with that. So whether that's like a mental health issue or joint pain or something like that. So there's such a vast area of people that have all these medical conditions that you can't see. So for example, we have a friend and she has spina bifida. And so you can see that she has a walker, but you cannot see that she also has a shunt in her brain, and so that affects some of her learning. And they have to be careful because one day they're going to have to replace that shunt. And so you don't see the mental part of her growing up with this and her recognizing that she has different abilities than her friends and that some things are really hard for her.
When we're talking a little bit about your apparel, your logo, or at least a lot of your apparel has a zebra on it. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a bit about that?
Okay. Yeah. So I think this is actually really cool. So a symbol for rare diseases, and Ehlers-Danlos specifically, which is what I have, and my son has, is a zebra. And what's cool about it is that when doctors go to medical school, they're told to look for the hoofbeats, not the zebra. Or when they hear the hoofbeats, look for the horse, not the zebra. Mm. So that means like the person who comes into you more likely has a cold than they have Ehlers-Danlos. So that's part of the struggle in getting diagnosed, is because you can't see, and because a lot of these things come up. Like if you have joint pain, you could have arthritis, you could have rheumatoid arthritis, you could have Ehlers-Danlos, you could have a myriad of other things. And so getting diagnosed is really tricky. So people who have rare diseases call themselves zebras.
That's interesting. So that
yeah, it's actually kind of a cool little symbol.
Well, I mean, I've never heard that before.
Identify and be part of a community, right? As if you're a zebra. And so, when you're on Instagram or something and they're like #zebra or, hey, I'm a zebra, it's kind of cool.
That's interesting. No, that's a really interesting analogy to it as well. I'd never heard that before, as far as what you saw about the hoofbeats. They hear hoofbeats, but they're looking specifically for a horse, not the other thing, right?
Yeah. Not that, yeah, because more likely it's going to be that person has the flu rather than they have this rare genetic condition that, the doctor might not even have heard of yet.
Well, see that, and looking at that, I think about the Pareto Principle, right? It's just 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort, and I kind of look at that in a lot of different ways. But in terms of the medical profession, they're looking for the things that are going to lead them to 80% of the people that they can help, not necessarily to 20.
Right.
Just because the reality is we all are limited in our time, in our resources, et cetera. I mean, I really can't fault them for that.
No.
And at the same time, there is that 20% or just as a kind of a round number that is neglected.
Right. Right. And it can be frustrating, but here's the other thing that I've learned as a patient and as a mom is that it can be frustrating to you kind of like fall through the cracks in some aspects, and it's harder to find treatment or things that help you. But you understand that, if a company has so much money to put into, their R&D, obviously they're going to do one that helps the masses. I mean, that just totally makes sense. But what you can do is learn to break down your own symptoms and treat your symptoms. So and find the things that help that. Like I go to Pilates because that helps my joints. But I also take some prescription Advil because that helps my pain. So you break down like the things that, and for my son, like he goes to horse therapy because he needs some physical therapy. He goes to OT because he needs that for his motor skills. And then, so you just kind of break down your symptoms and learn to find the people that can help those symptoms and realize that there's not very many people who are going to be able to treat your disability or your illness as a whole, which probably is in general anyway, right? I mean, not just for people with, a rare genetic condition.
Sure. When it comes to these invisible type illnesses, the folks in the communities you've interacted with, now whether it's within the community itself or from the outside looking in, are there some myths or misconceptions around kind of invisible illnesses that you've run into?
Yeah, actually, there's a whole slew of them. There's like and there's some bigger ones and other ones, but like that maybe it's not real. Maybe you just have a stomach ache, or that people won't believe you, or that you don't deserve to have a disability parking sticker because you don't walk with a walker, or that you can't find the help that you need, you're alone. And actually, one of the, I think, more interesting ones is my son. So he'll come home from school every once in a while early just because he gets overwhelmed or he gets too tired or something like that. And he's told me on more than one occasion, he's like, I feel like I can't be happy if I'm hurting. And we've talked about this many times. Like if you go to the ER and you're in a good mood, you're less likely to get treated right away. But if you have a chronic condition and you're still in a good mood when you're hurting, it's actually healthier than trying to like be depressed about it. And also, if someone is judging you because you left school early, but you're still in a good mood, but you deal with this pain and fatigue every day, that's their problem, not yours. Like you know it's true. And so let them think what they want to think, but don't let that affect how you view yourself. So I think that one was actually one of the hardest ones is not letting other people's perceptions affect how you see yourself and knowing that what you have is real.
I mean, that's something that we as people have to learn to go through anyway, right? Mm-hmm. We all have our troughs and peaks and, mm-hmm. But then on top of that, in just kind of quote unquote regular life, then if you have something that is challenging, like an invisible illness, you lay that on top of it as well. Mm-hmm. That could be even much more challenging. So mm-hmm. Is it just a matter of kind of trying to learn the same lessons as everybody else, or do you have to adapt, adopt other things that folks that don't have invisible illnesses would do for themselves? Like, is there something special that you have to do because of that, or is it a bit more of what other people have to? You just like you hear some people say, "Well, you just have to be more resilient." Well, everyone has to be resilient. But is it just being, well, you have to be more resilient, or is there another approach that has to happen?
I think you actually already said the word. I think you said, like, when you said adapt, I think that's it. Because the thing is, like, I don't want someone to be like, to tell me that I'm a warrior or something like that, because you know what, like, I'm just getting through life like you are. We just have different challenges, and some things may be harder for me to do, but I'm going to adapt that way. Like my sister, she has lupus, and she and her husband and their daughter were running the St. George Marathon, and she wanted to too. But lupus is challenging. I mean, you have flares and you're tired and your joints hurt, but she still did it. She just probably walked a little more than she wanted to, but she adapted for her. And that's the other thing too, is like, I mean, all my examples are going to be about my kid, sorry, but that we're like, part of the reason he got diagnosed was because we couldn't teach him to ride a bike. And he's the youngest of 3 boys. And so we kind of knew when he should and what he should be doing. And it was crazy that we couldn't get him to ride this bike. And then he was diagnosed, and it did take us a couple more years, but we had to teach him a different way. And one of the coolest things was we had a fantastic occupational therapist. And unfortunately, she moved to Nashville, which I'd be more than willing to drive to Nashville every month to see her. But she would have him, those under the desk wheels where you cycle under the desk, and it's like they're as seen on TV all the time. So he would do that, but then he would do a maze at the same time with the pen and do the maze. And so it's like teaching his brain to connect and teaching his body to keep doing a repetitive motion while his brain's engaged. So it was a fascinating way for me to look at how to teach him. But then I can use that approach to my other kids too, because they learn other things differently. And so I'm like, well, Luke might not be doing it the same way as his older brother, but his brain works differently. So you said it. It's just adapting and not getting stuck in I can't do it because I have whatever. So yeah, adapting.
As I mean, you and your son have this the same condition. So obviously you had your own kind of path that you had to find to kind of deal with your what you have personally. But then as a parent, having to help your son through that, what was that? Was there a transition for you there? Was there something that you had to learn in order to kind of go from like, let's say, treating or learning how to adapt for yourself, and then also okay, now I have to do this, help my child through this as well?
Yeah. So the interesting part of that is that so obviously I've had this Ehlers-Danlos my whole life, but I didn't have it to the extent that I do now. So I was actually diagnosed because of Josh. So when Josh was really small, like he was, we went through lots of different things because he was always in pain. So we thought like he had leukemia, or we thought he had something else. And that never seemed to be the case, luckily. But and then he was finally diagnosed. And then I started having this pain after I got this crazy tick bite. And so then I was diagnosed. So like the last 5 years is basically when I've been dealing with my symptoms. But so I didn't have to go through the teenage years. I didn't have to go to school like he does. And so that part is really hard to see. When you're a parent, you never want to see your kid struggle that much, right? But I'm also grateful that my symptoms have appeared, because I think it helps me understand how to deal with his a lot better. Like when he tells me he's sore or he gets overwhelmed or something, I have a different appreciation than, even my husband does. And the other thing is like one of my bigger worries is I know what it takes for me to get through my day now as an adult. And like I take a nap every day. And I hope and I worry that, when he has a job and he's older, I hope he has the flexibility or the understanding of an employer that he'll be able to work through his issues, because the everyday part is the hardest.
What do you mean by that? The everyday part?
Because when you get up in the morning, you're actually already looking forward to going to bed. But getting through, like when you get up in the morning and, it hurts to get out of bed, or you already have the brain fog that morning, or, some of your symptoms are really flaring that morning, it's kind of going to be the same thing every single day. So it's not just because and there's things that affect it, right? Like barometric pressure, you'll be a little bit worse, or you ate a lot of sugar the day before, you can tie a lot of things, but, Josh goes to school every day feeling crappy. and he doesn't get a break from feeling like that. So he goes to PE like that. He goes to physics like that. Whereas his friends, they don't have to go to physics every day, just feeling sore and having your knee sore from climbing the stairs. So it's like the everyday things that you have to do on top of it being every single day. And that's tiring and that's overwhelming. And you have to learn how to, um, again, adapt your life. So see what your triggers are, try to avoid them, unless it's ice cream. And then kind of track your symptoms to see, what things affect you the most. Like, is it barometric pressure? Is it, gluten? Is it something else like that? And then just try to, change up your day a little bit. Like I said, I take a nap almost every day because I can't get through that many hours and be able to function. And like I can't, and so if I take an afternoon nap, I'm a better mom in the evening and the afternoon when my kids are home. And I can, make dinner and I can help with homework or, go run errands with my husband or something like that. So those are the kind of things you have to figure out. But yeah, days can be really long.
On your way to kind of learning how to cope for yourself and your child in this, finding community, finding resources that would actually help you, as you look back on kind of your road to getting to that point, are there any pitfalls, any mistakes that you, if you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that or whatever. Now you'd be able to pass that on to folks that are, 5 years behind where you are now?
Yeah, actually. So some of it is true luck. Like you find someone who understands what your condition is and actually uses that to approach you as a person, because it's going to affect you differently than it will affect someone else. Like if you had Ehlers-Danlos and I did too, like it would present itself in a different way for each of us. And so you kind of, the thing is, like, you can't really give up. Like going to doctors all the time is really tiring, and some believe you and some don't. And like one rheumatologist I went to, because I was starting to have hand pain, this is at the beginning, she did x-rays and she didn't see anything on my hands. She's like, yeah, you should just go do hand therapy. I'm like, I don't even really know what that is, nor do I think that that's what my problem is. I was also told that when we were trying to figure out Josh, like, that I took him to a physical therapist, and because he could ride this little tricycle around their hallway, she's like, you shouldn't label your kid with something he doesn't have. Like, she basically called me a liar. And now, this is one thing I would do. I would speak up a lot more, because I knew, like, in those two examples, I knew that wasn't right. I knew that it wasn't just hand therapy, but she was a doctor. I didn't really know what was going on. And then the physical therapist, like, first of all, I shouldn't have let her insult me like that. I shouldn't have let her say that to me in front of my kid. And I knew there was something more there. So you should speak up and keep going. Like, maybe take a break between doctor's visits, but keep looking for the right doctor. Like, I now, after like 5 years later, I've been to, like, I don't know, 5 or 7 rheumatologists, and I found one that I like. But we've been through lots of physical therapists. We've been through lots and lots of doctor's visits, and it's tiring and it's really bad. My friend calls them a medical hangover, because it really does feel like that. But once you find the right team for yourself, it makes a world of difference. So don't give up.
Did you have any expectations? I mean, kind of starting that journey of, okay, well, I'm open to seeing this many professionals or whatever, and then it's going to be within that range. Like, I'll probably see 5 people and that'll be it. Or was it just, okay, just one step at a time? I mean, having the reason I ask is a lot of times if you have expectations, it can make it even more challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I wish I would have had a better plan. But I didn't, I was overwhelmed with my kid, because we didn't know, because we honestly, like, we walked into the neurologist, like, he spent 5 minutes with him and he's like, he has Ehlers-Danlos and dyspraxia, and that was it. I'm like, okay. So then I had to look it up and learn what it was. So I wish I would have had a plan and been able to figure out like where to seek help. And I also wish I would have started, I think, on a different level. Like I wish I would have recognized like that there's, like I said before, like break down the symptoms. I wish I would have done that, because I tried to have someone look at us as a whole, and that didn't quite work. And so I didn't have like so that's where my expectations were. I thought that someone would be able to treat the Ehlers-Danlos itself and like make us feel okay. And it doesn't quite work out that way, which is fine, like once you learn it. But that was definitely the expectation, was I shouldn't have had that one.
Well, I mean, going back a little bit to what we talked about earlier, is that for the majority of things that ail you, it is kind of like, okay, well, let's figure out what you've got. Here's a prescription for it, and then it's done, right?
Yeah.
But so, I mean, it doesn't sound like it was unreasonable for you to have that expectation. But
probably.
then, with that understanding that, well, for this particular thing now, I mean, it may be, it's got to have a different approach ultimately, at least so you can keep your sanity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because, you think like, you have a headache, so you take like an Excedrin or an Advil and it goes away. So you think that like everything should be like that, but it's not. I mean, like cancer patients, those poor people, I mean, that would be a nightmare trying to address all of those issues. And like chronic fatigue, like even if you have I had a really, really good sleep last night, but I'm kind of ready for a nap. And so it's not like so there's not like a pill that you can take for being sleepy.
I mean, aside from your, your professional resources that you're able to find, luckily, and with a goal in mind, right? Tenacity, and then obviously, and then your community as well. What about finding people that are kind of outside of that, right? I mean, there are people that they're kind of already the choir, right? You're in the choir, like, okay, they know the notes, they know the word, they know the lyrics and all that kind of stuff. But then there are people that are outside of that, whether it's your family or complete strangers, where it's, well, I'd like them to be part of the choir. I'd like them at least to understand what we're trying to do here, etc. Are there things that you found that have worked well to kind of get people on board and really sympathetic, empathetic to your condition, your son's condition, having an invisible illness? Are the things that you found that have worked well for, dealing with, friends, family, and strangers to do that?
Well, I can actually give you 2 examples there. And that's actually kind of the reason why I think that apparel part, it would be helpful, because people are interested in other people naturally, right? And so if you're out like getting your hair cut, and like I take my kid to go get his hair cut and to the eye doctor in the same week, and he doesn't make eye contact very well, and then he can't control like the tone of his voice, or like moderate the how loud or quiet it is. And then it's an overwhelming situation for him too. So he often comes across as rude. And because he's getting older, I don't want to be the parent I don't want to embarrass him. I don't want to talk over him. I don't want to talk for him. So if he had something, so if you mention it to, like, I ended up talking to the eye doctor about it, he was really, really interested in the disease, because people don't know about it. Right. And so I've tried to bring it up where it's not like my kid's not going to make eye contact, because I try to make it part of the conversation or something like that, where you can talk about it because people are interested. And again, like not complaining, but just like this, hey, this is what's going on, just making it part of your everyday life. Then one of the really cool ones is, and this kind of started by accident, is after Josh was diagnosed, he started going to therapy every week, and he'd leave school early every week. And so his friends kind of noticed and would ask him about it, but he wasn't ready to talk about it. Then his grade 5 teacher said, maybe it'd be helpful if Josh just said something. Would he be comfortable? So Josh and I put together this presentation, and I promise you, his teacher would still probably tear up. I still would, like, thinking about this, because he gave this presentation about what it was, what he did, what his therapy was like. And the kids, all these grade 5 little kids, were so interested that she actually ended up canceling math because they had so many questions. They were quiet, they were respectful, and they asked really, really good questions. And they were in grade 5. And one kid actually, like, I'll never forget, he raised his hand and said, "Josh, you are persistence." And Josh was like, "Well, thank you." And then, so since then, we've actually, every year, except for last year during the pandemic, Josh will go in to his teachers in middle school and high school and give a presentation about him, not just so they can put a face to the diagnosis and understand that there's something different, but so they can kind of be educated in this and realize that, he might need a little bit more understanding, but they're really, really interested in that this kid has something, and it's an interesting something, and he's not the only one, and so so it's basically like having a discussion like you and I are right now, learning about it and just making it part of your life and be willing to talk about it. And I think people respond much better to the discussion part of it and then just learning something new.
When it comes to your business itself, particularly around the apparel aspect of it and, getting word out that way, as you look back on your journey with the business side of things, are there any kind of mistakes that you made? Or like, oh, we did this wrong, or we could have done this one better?
There's so many. So I've been a stay-at-home mom for like 20 years, so my learning curve was pretty high, especially the social media part, because I didn't really do that. So yeah, lots of mistakes. So like learning how to make a website. I've done it like 3 times now, and I'm still tweaking it. So I made a mistake there. I paid some people to do things that I probably shouldn't have. One of the more entertaining mistakes I made was social media. I didn't get it because I honestly, like, I was only on Facebook for like cross-country messages, and I barely knew what Instagram was. I didn't really know how to use hashtags. And anyway, so I used one of those websites, where you can kind of find experts. And so I hired this girl to do social media for me. And my sister, she still laughs at me because I have this vision for my brand, right? Where it's like awareness and understanding and learning and stuff like that. And this girl made it into like, her hashtags were like fashionista and like was really like trendy, like I'm trying to be H&M or like Lululemon or something like that, where I'm trying to be like this trendy little 21-year-old brand, and didn't quite exactly fit with my vision. Like some of the pictures that were posted, I'm like, oh, that's embarrassing. So that was a big mistake, and I have since learned my lesson. And so yeah, the biggest lesson I've learned is that I needed more help than I thought I did. And I still need more help. So it's not something you can do by yourself because you don't know anything.
Now, as we close this out, to start thinking back on what you're trying to do is helping people that have these invisible challenges, as they start considering your words a bit more and your story and your story with your son, maybe they're starting to think, wow, that I want to start making things visible in my life a bit more. Mm-hmm. What are some things that they should probably consider a bit in creating their own journey towards that?
I think the first one is recognizing that it's not going to go away. That I've mentioned this several times. Like, I think I mention this every day to myself, at least, is that it can be part of me, and it does influence how I spend my day and what I do during the day, but it doesn't have to dictate things I can't do. And then I think finding the right people around you is important. And then just using that to have some confidence in yourself and using it to help build yourself up. And I think I said this phrase already, but my husband and I like Billions. And I don't know if you've ever watched it. It's a pretty cool show. Anyway, this was before I had decided to start the company, but there was a phrase that someone used in that show, and it said, there was never going to be another version of you. And we actually stopped it and rewound it, and I wrote it down, because that's totally true. Like, your genetics are how they're made up. Your childhood is what happened. Your life is what your experiences are, what shaped you. So there, like, that combination, I mean, there's only one you, and there was never going to be another version.
Kristy, this was great. Really appreciate you kind of sharing your experience through all this. I mean, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of people to really latch onto this conversation, because again, this is not just about people that have Ehlers-Danlos. There's a lot of things that people are going through, whether they care to admit it or not. So it's definitely a strong message. It's an important message to consider. If anyone wants to get a hold of you learn more about your company, where could they do that?
Well, I have a website that I'm continuously changing. It's called WearItbrand.com. And then I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. I have learned some social media, and that's at Zebra WearIt for both of them. And I really, really appreciate this conversation. I appreciate the questions and being able to talk about it. This was really interesting, and it was great for my first podcast. So I appreciate you being so kind to me.
No, absolutely. Kristy Hurley, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.